In the future, a zombie virus ravaged the world, cases appeared across the country, the symptoms could appear within days, or as quickly as a few minutes. An ordinary person could turn into an uncontrollable beast in the blink of an eye. Moreover, their speed far exceeded that of ordinary zombies, and they could also track through scent. Today, the World Health Organization officially declared it a global pandemic. The entire world was filled with chaos and violence, only the children were. Still unaware of the severity of the situation, the girl Abby played with her brother as usual, but she could sense that her mother was very anxious. Their soldier father had not returned home for many days. He was worried about his family and urged his wife to take the children to stay with relatives. The mother quickly packed their bags and led the two children to the car. As they stepped out of the house, they were attacked by zombies. Abby hid under the car and narrowly escaped, but her mother and brother were brutally bitten. Watching her mother rapidly turn into a zombie, a soldier rushed over and killed her. He told Abby to cover her ears, then he shot the boy. Many years passed, and Abby had grown into a young woman. She was raised under the guidance of Soldier Mike, and she mastered all the survival skills in the wild. After the zombie virus swept the globe, human civilization had rapidly regressed. Skyscrapers were gradually swallowed by vegetation. Abby and Mike planned to live by the sea. That night, they camped in the woods. Mike carefully set traps around the campsite. In the dead of night, a tin can was triggered. He quickly got up to check his surroundings. A strand of animal fur was stuck to the trap. He thought it was just a wild animal accidentally triggering the trap. Suddenly, a noise came from the bushes. Mike calmed the startled horse and fired his gun the moment the enemy burst out. To his shock, it was a zombie. Without delay, Mike and Abby quickly set off. They trained as they walked. They didn't encounter any new zombies along the way until one noon. While passing a dirt slope, they saw a car not far away. The driver inside rushed out in a hurry. A zombie suddenly lunged at him for a surprise attack. Mike told Abby not to act rashly, but the girl instinctively pulled the trigger. The bullet grazed the car driver. Mike had to kill the zombie. The two of them searched the car for anything valuable. The voice of the driver's companion sounded on the nearby walkie-talkie. Mike didn't want to cause trouble and planned to leave, but Abby was eager to make contact with people. She waved at the approaching convoy, explaining that their friend had been attacked, but the leader ordered them to lower their weapons, sending his men to check the scene. Despite Abby's repeated attempts to be friendly, the convoy members were not receptive.
Oh, we do, you little bitch. Hey! Don't do it, put it down!
As the tension between the two sides escalated, a pregnant woman got out of the car and gestured for everyone to calm down. Strange noises came from the hilltop. The horse nearby kept whinnying. A horde of zombies came rushing from all directions. The leader commanded everyone to get back in the car. Mike and Abby stood back to back, shooting. Due to the sheer number of zombies, they drew their swords from behind to save bullets and killed the enemy. The convoy members fought back fiercely as well. The entire slope was in chaos. A woman with a ponytail pulled out a Molotov cocktail. Before she could throw it, she was knocked down by a zombie from behind. The Molotov cocktail fell onto the pregnant woman's car by coincidence. This only made things worse. Meanwhile, a helmeted strongman was ambushed by a zombie. He forcefully shook off the attacker, but his shoulder had already been bitten by the zombie. The strongman sensed that he was about to turn. He pulled out his weapon, intending to end his own life. But the magazine was already empty. The strongman began to mutate. A zombie pinned down the convoy leader and tore him to pieces. Abby helped the pregnant couple to the car. Mike ran over and crashed into the gathered zombies. He drove through the encirclement. The hungry zombies roared behind them. After Abby checked their supplies, she realized they had suffered heavy losses. They had very little ammunition left. Mike asked the pregnant woman where they originally planned to go, and she said there was a colony near the river in the northeast direction. They wanted to seek refuge with the leader there. Mike had passed through many colonies on this journey, and he knew that those people were not welcoming to outsiders, so he didn't plan to go northeast. Just as he turned onto a side road, the car broke down. The pregnant woman's husband, David, checked the engine and concluded that the car was beyond repair. The four of them had no choice but to proceed on foot. They arrived at a community called Sunshine Homestead and planned to find an abandoned building to rest for a while. Mike led the way inside to check. After confirming that it was safe, they lit a campfire in the house. Abby talked with the couple. Through their conversation, it became clear that the convoy had originally lived on a secluded farm. At first, there were about 40 people, but later, the farm was attacked by zombies. To fend off the horde, they burned down an entire wheat field, exhausting all their food reserves. Fortunately, the leader contacted the colony via radio. He heard that it was near the riverside and was a boat town. the locals tied several broken boats together and gathered over 100 survivors living on the water. Not only was there a sufficient supply of water and food, but there were also a few doctors. After a show of hands, they decided to relocate. After hearing the pregnant woman's story, Abby said that she and Mike planned to head to the west coast, then take a boat to find a refugee camp. At this moment, Mike finished setting traps outside the building. He then unfolded a map to show David and his wife the route to the boat town. He didn't plan to escort the couple there because they had just had a confrontation with the horde. Zombies might be tracking their scent. In this situation, they needed to run as far away as possible.
But we were far enough.
Far enough don't exist, sweetheart.
Abby didn't understand why Mike's attitude was so harsh. She thought it would be nice to visit the boat town. What if it was a suitable place to live? However, Mike was very firm and educated Abby not to approach strangers casually and cause trouble like today. That night, thunder and lightning erupted. During the day, the zombies passed through the woods and discovered Mike's abandoned car. This showed that zombies retained a certain level of intelligence. David had not slept at all. He had actually sprained his ankle while fleeing, but he hadn't said anything for fear of worrying his wife. Mike finally felt a twinge of compassion. He took the initiative to propose, "I will take you to Boat Town." On the rooftop, Abby heard the sound of zombies nearby and quickly packed her things to warn Mike. However, the zombies had infiltrated the building. Abby was being chased by one of the zombies. Just as they were about to make contact, she dashed toward the broken window, grabbing the iron bars. The zombie couldn't stop in time and flew out. Mike appeared just in time and pulled Abby back into the building. The horde of zombies from the pit had already caught up. They were about to enter the building. Accidentally triggering a trap caused an explosion. Mike and the others took advantage of the chaos to leave the community. Abby suddenly remembered that she had been to this area as a child. If her memory served her right, there should be a civilian airport a few miles away. Abby's father owned a small plane. The father and daughter often flew it around. There used to be a dozen planes there. If they had a plane, they could save a lot of time. The entire journey would also be much safer. However, Mike was reluctant to take risks. What if they were surrounded by zombies on the way to the airport? David saw that the two had differing opinions. He suggested a show of hands. In the end, Abby's suggestion won by 3-2. Mike had to agree to detour to the airport. Unexpectedly, just after they walked a short distance, they found a car with a flat tire. The people inside had been shot dead. Mike instructed everyone to search the nearby building. They might find some overlooked supplies. Abby and David went inside to do a general inspection. They didn't notice a family of 3 hiding behind a stone wall. Instead, they found a few cans. There was also a wheelchair in the car's trunk. They could use it to push the pregnant woman along. Just as Mike and the others were leaving, the pursuing horde of zombies discovered the family of 4. The 2 children were knocked to the ground and devoured by zombies. Mike and the others arrived at the airport and looked up. The grass was completely bare, and there was nothing there. Mike sarcastically remarked, "I told you not to waste our time on this." Feeling disappointed, Abby looked around and unexpectedly found her father's old hangar. She led the way to open the hangar door. Inside, there was indeed the plane her father had left behind. Mike handed the handgun to the pregnant woman for protection and asked David to stay behind to check the helicopter. He took Abby to check the nearby buildings to ensure there were no threats nearby. The two of them climbed up to the lookout tower so they could spot approaching zombies at first sight. Before long, a horde of zombies surged from the forest. Mike and Abby hurried back to warn David and his wife. They hurriedly started the engine. Just at the critical moment, the plane finally began to taxi forward. The horde chased desperately behind them. Mike opened the door and knocked away the zombies. The helicopter finally lifted off the ground and flew into the sky. Unfortunately, just as they began to feel happy, this helicopter malfunctioned halfway, emitting black smoke and crashing to the ground. Fortunately, there was still a glimmer of hope. The helicopter fell into the dense treetops, which cushioned its fall. As a result, all 4 of them were unharmed. Mike opened the map to confirm that they were just 1 hill away from the boat town. It would take about 2 days to reach there. Mike decided to rest in place for the night. They decided to set out the next morning. David helped his wife lie down to rest. Then he quietly walked into an empty warehouse with a lantern. Mike heard a noise outside and rushed out to check. It turned out the pregnant woman was looking for food because she was hungry. The two began to chat. Mike mentioned that 3 months after he found Abby, he saved a boy named Jimmy. The boy's mother was a junkie. She was bitten by zombies while still under the influence of drugs. But Jimmy was very strong and smart, bringing a lot of laughter to Mike and Abby. But later, a zombie bit Jimmy. Mike had to kill the zombie himself. Since the outbreak of the zombie virus, he He had been faced with such situations repeatedly, killing friends and companions time and time again. Gradually, he stopped interacting with strangers. As long as he didn't form attachments or feelings, he became numb to death. So Mike wasn't a cold-blooded person, he was just forcing himself not to feel too much. In the pause of their conversation, David took out a handgun, preparing to end his own life. But after several attempts, he couldn't bring himself to do it. In despair, he rolled up his pant leg to reveal the bite on his ankle. It turned out that David was already infected with the virus. He ultimately didn't make up his mind to commit suicide. Because everyone showed symptoms at different times, Mike and the others hadn't noticed anything unusual about David. That day, they crossed a cornfield and walked into a nearby forest. David was sweating profusely, and his steps were unsteady. The pregnant woman noticed that his forehead was very hot. Mike noticed the bloodstains on David's pant leg. He took advantage of the pregnant woman walking away from Abby and pressed David against a nearby tree, then pulled up his pants to check. Mike quickly drew his weapon, preparing to shoot. Just then, Abby suddenly called him over. Mike told David to make a decision quickly. He went to find Abby to confirm the situation. It turned out there was a lit-up house ahead. Mike cautiously approached to take a look. A spotlight illuminated the area above the farmhouse. The homeowner warned them over the radio not to come closer. Ignoring Mike's objections, Abby walked under the light and explained that they were just passing travelers, and there was a pregnant woman with them. They were looking for a place to rest for the night. The homeowner turned off the lights and opened the door. Mike and Abby raised their hands as they entered the porch. They placed all their weapons into a box at the entrance. The pregnant woman and David followed closely behind. The four of them arrived at the homeowner's living room. Inside, there were not only electric lights but also many experimental supplies. The old man introduced himself as an engineer. He had built a power generation system to maintain the basic electricity needs of the house. He also grew some vegetables and fruits to solve the food issue. After he finished speaking, he brought out food to serve everyone, although it was just some ordinary vegetables. For those who ate canned food every day, this was already a rare delicacy. Abby eagerly took a hot shower. Mike took the luggage to settle into the guest room. He was surprised to find a laptop on the table, so he pulled out a USB drive from his bag to read it. Inside were photos of Mike and his wife. The woman in the picture was pregnant. The couple's eyes were filled with hope for the future. On Abby's side, she found a family photo as well. This comfortable house made everyone reminisce about life before the disaster. Only the pregnant woman felt a lingering unease in her heart because the baby in her belly hadn't moved for a long time. The pregnant woman was very worried about the safety of her fetus. After a short rest, the group gathered in the living room to chat. The homeowner also brought out some homemade wine. According to the homeowner, this house had been here for 20 years. He had lived here since he got married. However, his wife had been killed by zombies. Although the homeowner had heard about the boat town, he preferred to be alone. As their conversation deepened, the homeowner's views became increasingly anti-human. He believed the virus was a purification of the earth. Only the strong could survive in this world. That's right, the Thanos environmental theory was making a comeback. The homeowner passionately expressed his views, showing not an ounce of sympathy for the dead. Mike couldn't help but feel more alert. At this moment, David felt increasingly unwell. He walked over to the sink and lifted his shirt. The toxin had spread throughout his body. David pretended to be calm as he returned to the living room, only to find that his wife and Abby had all passed out. The wine must have been spiked with something. The homeowner rolled up his sleeves to reveal a strange device. The device emitted a special whistle that made David's head pound painfully. The homeowner explained that this was a special dog whistle that only affected the infected. He tied up David and the others and locked them in the laboratory for an incentive factor test. Ordinary people simply couldn't understand this mad inventor. Since you have a way to deal with zombies, why not share it with everyone?
Now why would I want to do that when I've got other plans?
After the homeowner finished speaking, he revealed a cage in the shadows, and surprisingly, his wife was locked inside, and it had been severely necrotized. The homeowner had been studying the abilities of these new species. David could serve as an excellent test subject. The pregnant woman realized only then that her husband had been bitten by a zombie. The homeowner opened the iron cage and used the special dog whistle to control the zombie, sending her to attack the bound captive. Mike kicked her away with a flying kick. The zombie turned and attacked David. Unexpectedly, the virus did affect the physical abilities of ordinary humans. David easily broke free from the chains and grappled with the female zombie. He unleashed inhuman strength, causing debris to rain down from the walls. David pushed aside the zombie in an attempt to free Mike and the others. The homeowner hurriedly used the dog whistle to try to stop him. Unexpectedly, David ignored the excruciating pain in his head and freed the remaining three from their bonds. Mike quickly grabbed a weapon from the table and started shooting. The four of them rushed out of the laboratory. Mike locked the homeowner behind the door and told Abby to grab the car keys from the table. Just as the homeowner was about to break down the wooden door, Mike suddenly turned and punched David. He felt he couldn't allow an infected person to continue with them.
Tell me why I shouldn't fucking kill him!
Because it's not up to us. Not yet. We gotta go.
Meanwhile, the homeowner had already broken through the wooden door. The four hurriedly got into the car and fled. At the same time, the horde of zombies tracking Mike was still persistent. They walked along the scent and got closer and closer to this place. However, Mike faced an even greater crisis. The pregnant woman's water had broken. They urgently needed to find a safe place to give birth. The horde of zombies blocked the way ahead. Mike instructed everyone to hold on tightly. As they were about to crash through, the zombies ahead quickly dodged out of the way and then followed closely behind them. In a critical moment, a broken log blocked their path. Mike called everyone to get out and proceed on foot. The boat town was not far away. They just needed to hold on a little longer to reach safety. David saw more and more zombies closing in behind them. He urged his wife to go ahead with Mike. He was already infected with the virus anyway. It was better for him to stay and hold off the zombies. Mike tossed David a bullet, so he could choose to die with dignity in the end. Mike quickly left, holding the pregnant woman. David somehow found a cigarette. He charged into the horde of zombies, fighting desperately. For some unknown reason, David seemed to be a bit stronger than the average zombie, but he was no match for the leader of the horde. The zombie leader snapped David's neck and continued leading the horde in pursuit. The three of them ran frantically. Finally spotting the lookout tower of the boat town, Abby hurried over and shouted for help. The people in the lookout tower noticed the horde and immediately opened fire, successfully forcing them back. The main characters arrived at the surface base by boat. Mike placed the pregnant woman on the bed. A blonde woman stayed behind to take care of her. She told Abby and Mike to go out first. The people on the boat were very cautious, carefully checking the two for any wounds. Then they introduced the place as Kingsport. Although they had just saved their lives, Mike had a bad feeling about this place. The next morning, the colony leader, George, had them summon Mike and Abby for a conversation. He welcomed them to Kingsport on behalf of the community and hoped everyone could coexist peacefully here. However, Mike had no intention of staying long.
Moving on. First light.
What if I don't want to move on?
Mike understood the darker nature of humanity very well. At first, you might think these people are friendly, but gradually, the situation would continue to deteriorate. In this lawless and disorganized apocalypse, the human heart is scarier than the zombies. But Abby was tired of a life on the run, wanting only to stay here and live a stable life. The blonde woman cautiously interrupted them, informing Mike that the newborn was very healthy. However, the mother's condition was not good. She feared she only had a few hours left. If there was anything to say, it was best to say it now. The woman named her daughter Hope. Without this child, she wouldn't have made it this far. Unfortunately, this mother wouldn't be able to watch her child grow up. She could only entrust her daughter to Mike's care and hoped her daughter would grow up to be as strong as Abby. Mike couldn't bring himself to refuse this plea and could only take on this responsibility. The homeowner chased them into the forest near the riverbank with his dog whistle. A large number of zombies lay on the ground. The horde leader detected the scent of living humans and was about to attack, but it was controlled by the sound of the dog whistle. The homeowner gazed at the distant Kingsport, unsure of what he was plotting in his mind. Mike had to stay temporarily to take care of the baby. Meanwhile, Abby had completely adapted to life on the houseboat. She had even hit it off with a blonde young man. They indulged in pleasure, putting the sorrow of the apocalypse behind them. That evening, Abby saw the blonde boy leave the crowd with another girl. She quietly followed them. Unexpectedly, she found herself deep in the cabin and discovered a strange device hanging from the railing. Abby was curious about what this was for when the blonde man suddenly appeared and explained that it was their last guarantee. In fact, the entire boat town was rigged with landmines. If zombies broke in, they could be detonated. Abby questioned, "But wouldn't we be doomed too?" The blonde boy gestured for her to look at the passageway below the boat. He said that a dam used to run through here. People had dug a tunnel beneath the river. The dam was never completed, but the tunnel remained. If the boat town came under attack, they could escape through the tunnel and then detonate the mines. It seemed that this place was indeed quite safe. The next morning, the homeowner used the dog whistle to slowly guide the horde of zombies toward Kingsport. A guard was standing on the deck, taking a leak. In the next moment, he was tackled by a zombie. Then more and more zombies flooded in. Mike handed the baby over to the blonde woman for safekeeping. He began searching everywhere for Abby. Although there was an escape route on the boat, the situation arose so suddenly that no one had time to flee. While Abby was rescuing someone, the homeowner ambushed her. Mike shouted and rushed over to help. but he was pushed down to the lower level by a zombie. Mike drew his knife and stabbed the opponent to death. The homeowner jumped down as well. He got close to Mike and kicked him a few times, saying that humanity shouldn't defy the laws of evolution. Mike seized the opportunity to grab the homeowner's arm and smashed the whistle device against the wall. The zombies lost control and charged at the homeowner, tearing him to pieces. Meanwhile, the blonde boy and the others had already escaped through the tunnel from Kingsport. The people around urged him to detonate the explosives quickly, but Abby and Mike had not yet made their escape. At this moment, Abby was knocked down by the zombie leader. In her desperate struggle, she saw the leader's bracelet. This zombie leader was actually Abby's father. Mike had no time to ask more questions and quickly pulled Abby away. The two of them dove into the tunnel, running toward the light. On the blonde boy's side, he couldn't withstand everyone's urging and could only activate the bomb to destroy the boat town. Fortunately, Mike and Abby had safely escaped. Before anyone could catch their breath, the zombie leader suddenly reappeared. No one knew how he had escaped. Mike rushed forward and engaged in a struggle with the zombie leader. Abby held her breath and shot the zombie dead. No matter what, he was no longer her father. Tomorrow the sun would rise again. Mike planned to lead everyone to find a refugee camp, and this is where the film ends. It was a somewhat formulaic zombie road movie, featuring the classic duo of a tough guy and a cute girl, along with the familiar trope of a pregnant woman in the apocalypse. It's a must-have element for zombie movies. The zombies in this film had surprisingly advanced combat abilities, possessing intelligence and exceptional speed. Unfortunately, the protagonists were too exceptional, and no matter how strong the zombies were, it was of little consequence. In the latter half, a plot about a scientific monster was inserted to highlight the issue of human nature, adding some readability. If you enjoy my channel, please subscribe to my channel.